This is Me Before Mom, the podcast that helps moms stay connected to themselves while doing the most important job they'll ever have. And I'm your host, Bert Anderson. Hi, today's episode deals with the topic of suicide. If you or somebody you know is experiencing a suicidal crisis or emotional distress, please talk to someone or call the National Suicide Helpline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Please listen with caution, and as always, be kind to yourself. Hey, so this is going to be a show talking about mental health. I wanted to give you a heads up if this is a difficult topic for you. If you find that you're struggling, I just want to encourage you to listen, fast forward, skip this episode if you want to. You know, you need to take care of yourself and your mental health. And I know that sometimes this topic can be really uncomfortable for some people, myself included, at times in my life. So take care of yourself, and we'll catch you on the next episode if you're bowing out. Hey, this is Bert, and you are listening to Me Before Mom. COVID-19 is still here. We've gone through a few seasons of it. As of right now, it does not seem like it's really going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And despite our best efforts to pretend that it's not here, some of us, it's here and it's real. I don't know. When I think about back to lockdown, you know, when in Minnesota school was like canceled for like 2 weeks, you know, people were trying to figure out what to do. We were trying to figure out how to live the lockdown life. My husband and I were watching the news, and I remember I looked at him and I said, well, if anything else comes out of this, that's a good thing. Maybe it'll end the stigma of mental illness, because we're humans. We weren't meant to do life alone. And yes, I have my family and I have my husband and I have my children, but there is something completely different. I feel, especially if you are a mom, there's just something different in talking to people that you are not responsible for, or if you have a partner, you know, you're not doing life with, somebody who's not in your day in and day out. You know what I mean? And the more I talk to my friends, the more I see them in social distanced settings, the more I'm picking up on just the different stresses of life. And we can joke about 2020, and I love all the memes that are going around, and I love how, you know, when something goes wrong, I just blame it on 2020, and it's fun. And I think that's a good thing. And I think we need to have a little bit of a sense of humor when it comes to this, because if you think about it too seriously, you just get in this deep, dark hole. And I actually, you know, I found myself there. I remember at the beginning of lockdown, and I almost became obsessed with the daily briefings. I felt like I knew our governor on a personal relationship because I was watching him every single afternoon. It's good for a certain time, but when it's all consuming, it gets to a point where it's like it messes with your mind. And what I'm going to say, I've not actually talked about with a lot of people, but I got to a point at the beginning of all of this where it seemed like the future was like nobody could say how long we were going to be, you know, locked down. How nobody knew how COVID worked. Nobody knew if we could ever do life ever again. And for me, my family, my parents, my mom and dad, being able to see them is just, it's one of the joys of my life. I love my mom and dad. They live about 6 hours away from me, so it's not easy to see them. And the thought of doing life without them, I understand they're going to die one day. But my mom has an autoimmune disorder. And so, you know, the danger for her to get sick is very real and it's very scary. Plus, we were locked down, and I remember typing like a text to my mom, dad, and my sister. And I think I said something like, if this is what life is going to look like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, if this is the unforeseeable future is going to be being locked up in your house, not seeing, like, what is life? This is not living. And just that little seed that I said. And of course I was like, oh no, I'm fine. I'm not going to say I'm fine. I'm really fine. Which when I say that I'm fine, it means I'm really not fine. But that little seed planted this thought of, it could be like this forever. And do you want to be here for it? And that was scary. I actually, when you're in these heightened states of stress and anxiety, I mean, we're in a global pandemic. Like, it's not normal. It's not normal. And it is okay for you to say, this is not normal and I'm not okay. Little situations all of a sudden become triggers for big life decisions. And a little situation in my life, and it was more of me like disappointing somebody or something, it spiraled out of control to the point where I was in my closet in my bedroom, sobbing hysterically, just weeping. And my kids, they were worried about it. They were worried about me. My husband, walked up, and I told him, like, I can't right now. I cannot parent. Like, you just need to do this. But I sat in that room and I started to write a note, which sounds very weird because I'm far enough away from the experience now that it's not as hard for me to talk about it and to, admit it to you. And it's not like admitting it. I don't know. I have always believed that, if I'm going to have depression, and I do have depression, if I'm going to struggle with this, like, by God, I better help somebody. And that is why I'm being vulnerable with you right now. That is why I'm telling you that during COVID, I started to write a suicide note. The next, I like cried all night. I just not even in my right mind, you guys. Like, I wanted to go in my car and like drive. And my husband was like, no, you're not going anywhere. You're staying here with me. We woke up the next morning. He asked me if I wanted to talk. And I just remember feeling numb, just kind of like a shell of a human. And I'm going to say confess because it felt like a confession. It felt like something I didn't really want to do, but somehow I blurted out that I had started to write, this note. And the look on his face it wasn't judgmental. It was very loving, but I could see that he was scared. So he got on the phone and called an older woman that's kind of like a mentor to me. And I told him he could call her. So she came over. She was the first person that we let into our house. And we just sat and we just cried. And, she was like, what's going on? And I just was like, I'm just so scared. I'm scared about losing my mom. I'm scared that I'm going to get this thing and pass it on to somebody and they're going to get sick and they're going to die. Like I'm scared that I'm, never going to be able to walk outside again and be with people again. I'm an extrovert for goodness sakes. Like I need people. I need people. And one of the things that she said to me, and it's kind of become my mantra through all of this, not my mantra in that I'm being careless, but as far as my mindset goes, she was telling me that she had decided when she was younger that she was going to, instead of live dying, she was going to die living. And for me, that means controlling my mind, controlling those thoughts and that deep kind of feeling of despair, and getting to the point where it's not controlling my life. That doesn't mean that I didn't need help though. So the other thing that I did, other than talking to this woman, was I got the name of a counselor. I called her on the phone. She came recommended by some other friends of mine, and I started to see her virtually. We did telehealth, and I started to see her weekly. Talking to her and having somebody who I can talk to, and I'm not afraid to give, to burden her with what I'm feeling. Because when you're struggling with your mental health, when you're struggling with anxiety or depression, you're not in the right kind of space to want to unload your problems onto anybody else, because your negative self-talk is such that you just see yourself as a burden. I'm not going to talk about this because it's a burden. I don't want to talk about it. And so I'm not going to talk about it. And it was interesting. I saw my parents over Memorial Day weekend. Our families, we quarantined ourselves for 2 weeks. And then we went down to Galena, where my parents live, and my sister and her family came there too. And we were leaving on Monday, and I was getting really annoyed and angry with my sister. And at this point, I had already had at least one therapy appointment. And I was really getting annoyed with Laura, my sister, and kind of started saying stuff to my mom. And she looked at me and she was like, are you choosing to get mad because you don't want to be sad? The floodgates just opened, and I just could not stop crying, because at that moment in time, leaving my parents was terrifying. It was such a great weekend, and we had so much fun together. And I just felt like this could be it. Like, I am going to lose everything that I care about in this pandemic. And so instead of confronting the sadness, I decided to get angry. And that is something that my therapist talks to me about all the time, because I've always kind of wondered why it's easier for me to get mad than it is for me to show that I'm sad. And she has said that anger often is an easier emotion for you to handle than allowing yourself to feel the hurt and the pain that's there when you're sad. I mean, think about that. Think about how many times you have really felt sad, but what you decide to do instead is get angry. When I was growing up and moving all the time as a military brat, I always, about like a few weeks before it was time to move, I would subconsciously pick a fight with a friend and get to a mental state where it was like, oh, I don't care about this place. I'm leaving. Who cares? I'm just going to go and reinvent myself. But it was a coping mechanism, because I was leaving a place that I had formed bonds really liked it, you know, and yeah, I was used to moving all the time, but that doesn't mean it wasn't sad. It doesn't mean that it wasn't hard for me as a child to constantly be uprooted and going to a new place. So it was easier to leave a place being angry than to leave a place and be sad. And so I just look at kind of like how we're handling the pandemic and how being angry makes us feel like we're in control of something. And maybe we just need to kind of mourn what's been lost. You know, I don't know what the future is going to look like. I don't know if we will ever stop wearing masks. I don't know. If I have to wear a mask for the rest of time so that I can be with people, you better believe I'm going to wear a mask for the rest of time, and it's going to be really eccentric and bedazzled, and it's going to look amazing, and I'm going to use it as an accessory. I don't care. I just want to be with my people. And maybe you're listening to this right now and you're feeling like you're like stuck. I remember thinking back to when we were on lockdown, and I remember waking up every morning and kind of like waking up after a dream, and then all of a sudden having this sinking feeling of, oh, it's another day. And I don't want to live my life that way, because yes, things have changed dramatically. And at this point in 2019, you know, we had not even, a global pandemic was nothing ever that I thought was going to happen. Not even on my radar. I don't think it was on anybody's radar except for, you know, super smart scientists who study infectious disease. But what we've been through as a community is really challenging. And as women, as moms, our tendency is going to push through it, to ignore it. And when I say ignore it, I'm talking about your feelings. Maybe you're downplaying how you feel. I was talking to a friend and she was talking about how she was feeling really frustrated, and she was kind of like, you know, lamenting over this and just kept talking and talking. And she was like, but it's stupid. Like, it's stupid. I need to get over it. You know what? It's not stupid. What you are dealing with right now, whatever is stressing you out, whatever is making you sad, whatever is making you angry, now I want you to listen to me, like really listen to me. It is not stupid, because it is affecting your everyday life. It's not dumb. Going and seeing a therapist, even for the smallest reason, if you feel like you need to talk to somebody, a health professional, because you're stressed out over your dog, let's say, it might be small in comparison to, you know, thousands of other people, but to you, that's a really big deal. And life is so hard and so can be so dark. And we only have a short, like a few, we don't even know how long we're going to be here. And it's really short. And do you really want to live in a space where you just keep waiting for things to get better and they just never seem to get better? I have news for you. You need to get help sometimes to make it better. And that doesn't make you less of a woman. It doesn't mean you're not strong. I beg to differ. I think if you are able to look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I need to go talk to somebody, you are 10 times braver than you were when you were stuffing all of your feelings and you were just trying to be super mom. Because you know what? Super mom does not exist. At least on this podcast, she does not exist. She is not here. Let's be real. Our kids are watching us. They're watching us. Mental health and mental illness is a huge side effect of the pandemic that we're going through right now. And I cannot stress to you enough how even if you were totally fine before this thing started, you could be really struggling with it now, and you are completely normal, as much of normal is a word. A lot of people feel this way. A lot of people are feeling like they can't do it, or they're just pushing through life, waiting for a vaccine and then waiting for, everything to just go away and just be back to the way it was before. It's not going to go back. It's not. I mean, think about 9/11. Think about how much changed when 9/11 happened. The first time my kids went on an airplane, it dawned on me as we were standing in the security line, the security check-in. I never had to stand in a security check-in when I was a kid and I was going on an airplane. We never had to wait down in baggage claim when I was a kid to pick somebody up from the airport. You walked to the gate. And on September 11th, 2001, that changed everything. And now we're in this time and COVID-19 is here and it has changed everything. And it's okay for you to see that and recognize it. If you don't believe me, whatever, fine. If you don't see that mental health is an issue, we have some links in the show notes because, I did do some research and there's tons of stats and I don't really like numbers, so I'm not going to read them out, but you can go and look at the very interesting surveys that like the World Health Organization did. The CDC also did a survey to check in on people and see how they're doing mentally. We're not okay mentally. And I think that we need to, part of coming out of this pandemic stronger is going to mean that we are really in tune with ourselves and what we need. So for me, I have found during COVID that coloring is like my solace. I love it so much. And there are some nights when I could be being productive and doing other things. And you know what? I'm not going to because I want to sit here and I won't color because I feel stressed. And that's okay because I don't need to be on my A game all the time. Who am I trying to impress? The laundry fairy? I don't think she cares about my laundry. Do something that you enjoy and don't apologize for it. Share your feelings with a friend. Call them on the phone. See them outside if you can. Don't apologize though for how you're feeling because how you're feeling is completely valid and understandable. And what is hurting you and what is a big deal to you, sure, it might not be a very big deal to me, but I care about you. And it hurts me that it's hurting you and that it's having an effect on your life. We've talked about this on the podcast before, like people asking for help and telling somebody you need help is not, you're not burdening the person you're talking to. It is an honor for somebody, like at least for me, when somebody opens up to me, it's an honor. Thank you for being vulnerable with me and for sharing that with me. And I promise you, hopefully, I don't know your friends, but I hope that they're the kind of people who would feel the same way. So if you find yourself really struggling, if this is something that, if you're listening to this and it's hitting home, I really, really want to encourage you to not move on to the next thing or hit the next podcast that you're going to listen to and try to ignore it. I want you to stop what you're doing and think about how much better life could be if you talked to someone and put down, the Pinterest perfect mom vision that you have. She doesn't exist. And just be vulnerable. Just allow yourself to be vulnerable, to feel the feelings that you need to feel. And if you're looking to find somebody to talk to, like a professional, ask around. Ask your friends. Ask your doctor. There are ways to find therapists so that you feel safe. This is a really heavy episode, isn't it, guys? Sorry, not sorry. Sometimes we have to talk about really hard things. I think the state of mental illness and mental health in this country is the stigma that comes with mental illness needs to end. I've said it before, no depressed person wakes up and thinks, I'm going to be depressed today. That sounds fun. Nobody chooses this. Nobody chooses to struggle mentally with something. And if there's any good that's going to come out of this pandemic, maybe it's that the stigma of mental illness ends and lessens, and we all start to not be so judgmental. So don't try to put on just this air of perfection. Mom, I want you to embrace where you're at right now. I want you to see that vulnerability is a strength and not a weakness. And if you need help, I want you to go and I want you to ask for help, and I don't want you to apologize for it. Do not apologize for how you feel, because your feelings are valid. And through all of this, the pandemic and everything else, the dumpster fire that is 2020, the best thing you can do for yourself is to be kind in however that looks. Be kind to yourself. Always be kind. That's all we have. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to connect with me on bertmanderson.com, and please visit our website, matriarchdm.com, for all of the show notes and to hear other awesome podcasts.